John walked into the cafe, looking around as he searched for the person he had arranged to meet. Just a few seconds later, James, the older man he had met before, stood up and waved at him. They sat down at a table by the window, the surrounding atmosphere calm, with soft music playing from the speakers. John picked up his cup of coffee and looked directly at James. "You called me here, what's this about?" James sighed, holding his coffee cup, his voice serious. "I asked you to meet today to make things clear." John looked at him coldly. "You don't need to explain. I already know everything, it's not like you think." James hesitated a little but continued. "If it's not like you think, then what is it? I haven't hurt anyone." "Then I don't understand why you acted this way," John replied coldly. "My father and you were very close friends, we held each other in high regard. But suddenly he went missing. I don't know where he went. Wasn't it you who took all the land from my family?" James pursed his lips, his eyebrows furrowing. "You misunderstand me. I never did that." John let out a bitter laugh, his eyes icy. "If I heard this from others, I wouldn't believe it, but it was my father himself, just before he died, who told me the truth. He said your family took the land from mine and sent us abroad." James's voice grew slower, a bit uneasy. "That was just a misunderstanding." John stared at him, his gaze sharp and cold. "You have no right to ask about that. Everything that happened to my mother is because of you. You will have to pay for what you've done." Hearing this, James looked at John, his eyes narrowing with resolve. "I never expected this misunderstanding to go this far. How do you expect me to pay for it?" John didn't hesitate, replying with a cold, emotionless tone. "I want your family to go bankrupt, to become poor, so you can feel the same way my family did. After losing everything, you'll understand." James fell silent for a moment, taking a sip of his coffee. "You can do whatever you want, but don't touch my family." John shook his head, smirking. "Your son is very smart and talented." "Smart at what?" James asked, his voice lower, no longer unfamiliar with John. "I heard you're in love with Diep, but she's pregnant with someone else. What's going on there?" John looked at James with a cold, piercing gaze. "My business is none of your concern, James. You'll have to understand that things are not always as you think. Everything has its price." James looked at John, realizing that everything had passed the point of no return, and that he would have to face the consequences of his past mistakes. James sat in the barber's chair, the buzzing sound of the clippers filling the quiet shop as the barber expertly trimmed his hair. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, trying to focus, but his thoughts kept drifting to Diep. Today was important. He was planning to take her to the doctor, to get the answers they both needed about her pregnancy. He wanted everything to be clear, to know exactly what was going on. He adjusted his shirt, glancing at the clock. He was almost done. Meanwhile at home, Diep was busy in the kitchen. She was making her favorite dish, a fresh nom-du-du papaya salad, the ingredients laid out neatly on the table. She carefully shredded the papaya, her hands working with precision as she added chili, garlic, and a dash of fish sauce, the fragrant aroma already filling the room. She smiled to herself, lost in the simple task of preparing food. It had been a long time since she felt this grounded, this in control. But today there was a feeling of uncertainty in the air. She couldn't deny the fear that had settled deep in her chest ever since the doctor's visit, and the truth she was still trying to wrap her mind around. She set the dish aside, grabbing a small container to pack it in. Diep was planning to bring it to the market to sell, just like she did every day. It helped keep her mind occupied, though today the routine felt strangely different. She knew James would be coming soon, and the thought of him helping her through what lay ahead gave her a sense of comfort, even if she didn't fully understand what was happening between them. Diep stood at her usual spot in the market, her small stall filled with fresh papaya salad, nom-du-du, and other vegetables she had brought from home. The morning sun beat down on the bustling market, where people moved between the rows of stalls, chatting and bargaining. The scent of fresh produce and street food filled the air, making everything feel alive and busy. As she arranged the colorful plates of papaya salad, a woman approached her, eyeing the vibrant dish. "How much for one plate, dear?" the woman asked, her voice friendly. Diep smiled warmly, her hands still busy arranging the salad. 15,000 VND per plate, ma'am. The woman nodded, taking a plate of the papaya salad and handing over the money. "I'll take two," she said, smiling at Diep as she handed over the payment. "Thank you, ma'am," Diep said, carefully wrapping the plates and handing them over with a polite bow. As the woman walked off, a man came up to the stall, looking at the dishes curiously. "How many bowls do you have?" he asked. Diep glanced over her stock, then answered, "I have plenty. Just let me know how many you'd like." The man nodded and pointed to a couple of bowls. "I'll take 3, please." "Of course," Diep said as she quickly packed the bowls, making sure each one was neatly prepared and ready to go. She handed them to the man, who paid her with a smile. After selling all the papaya salad, Diep returned home feeling both tired and accomplished. She walked into her little hut and sat down, taking a moment to drink some water. As she relaxed, she noticed the roof had a small hole in it, causing a bit of water to leak through. Without wasting any time, she grabbed a fresh palm leaf and skillfully patched up the hole. She made sure the roof was stable and secure. Then she took a moment to arrange the light bulbs, hanging them carefully to create a warm and inviting atmosphere in the hut. The soft glow of the lights gave the space a cozy feel, making it a perfect place to relax and reflect after a busy day. Diep was in the middle of tidying up her house when she noticed someone entering. She looked up and saw James's father standing in the doorway. Startled, she quickly stood up and greeted him. "Hello, uncle," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "How long have you been back from abroad?" James's father, who had just returned from his trip, smiled faintly and replied, "I've been back for a few days now. Is everything going well with your work abroad?" "Yes, it's going well. Please have a seat, and I'll get you some water," Diep responded politely, offering him a seat at the table. As they sat down, James's father looked around the room, his eyes searching Diep's face. "So, this time you're back in Vietnam for a visit, or is it for business?" "I'll have some water now," Diep offered, though she was curious about why he had come. James's father gave a slight nod. "I'm here for some business, and I'll be handling a few things for the company," he said casually. Then his eyes shifted, and he leaned forward slightly. "Diep, I need to ask you something. Are you pregnant?" Diep froze, the question catching her off guard. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Yes, uncle, I'm not entirely sure, but I think I am. A few days ago, a doctor came over to examine me, and he predicted that I might be pregnant." She paused, her voice dropping to a softer tone. "But that was just the doctor's prediction." James's father stared at her intently. "So, are you pregnant with James's child?" Diep shook her head slowly. "No, uncle, it's not that. James and I have never been together in that way. But it's just the doctor's prediction. I haven't had the time to get another checkup yet." The weight of the conversation hung heavily between them. James's father didn't immediately respond. Instead, he let out a deep sigh and looked away, as though trying to process what Diep had just told him. "Diep, I've given you the opportunity to be with my son," he said after a long pause. "And now this has happened. The whole village is talking about it. What will people think of me?" Diep's heart sank, her mind racing. "I'm really sorry, but I don't know where this came from. During the time I've known James, I've never been involved with anyone else. I don't know if this is a mistake by the doctor or what, but I truly don't know." James's father's expression grew colder, his voice tinged with frustration. "Whether it's true or not, it's already affecting my family. What else can you say? Should I give you another chance?" Diep's voice trembled as she tried to explain further. "I'm really sorry, uncle, but I don't know why this happened to me while I was with James. I've never lied to him. At first, you thought I was a good person, and that's why you allowed me to get involved with your son." She stopped and took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "If someone is poor and lives well, you'd respect them, but if someone is poor and doesn't live well, you can't accept that." Her words hit harder than she expected, and James's father looked at her with a harsh gaze. "I've clearly misjudged you. You're not worthy of my son." Diep looked away, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm truly sorry, uncle, for making you think that way." James's father's eyes grew hard. "But this still isn't confirmed. Is it real or not?" He let out a deep breath as if to gather his thoughts. "Go get checked again. No one admits to stealing if they didn't steal." Diep stood still, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. "Now what you're doing is hurting my family. Don't blame me. If you were me, would you accept this?" She remained silent, not knowing how to respond, the silence between them growing unbearable. James's father then leaned in, his voice hardening. "It's best that you know your place and stay away from my son. Don't make me come here again." The words stung like a slap, leaving Diep speechless. She nodded quietly, her face pale, as James's father turned and left, the door shutting with a finality that echoed through the house. Diep stood there for a long time, alone with her thoughts, feeling the weight of the words he had left her with. As James's father left Diep's house, he saw James standing in front of the door. James immediately greeted his father. "Dad, when did you get back?" "I just arrived," his father replied briefly, but there was an edge in his voice. James, noticing the tension, asked, "So why did you come here today?" His father looked at him sternly. "I came to tell you something. Diep is pregnant." James's heart sank at his father's words. "I know," his father continued. "I know about everything now. Go home, James, just go home." James was confused. "But I came here to take Diep to the doctor to get things cleared up." His father's tone hardened. "No, go back. I'm telling you now, Diep is pregnant with someone else's child. I can't allow you to be involved with her anymore." James was taken aback by his father's reaction. "But, Dad, this isn't certain yet, it's only the doctor's prediction. We need to find out the truth." His father's voice grew sharper. "I know what the village is saying. It's all over town now. What face do I have left with all these rumors swirling around?" James, not backing down, shook his head. "The village gossip is one thing, but I can't just abandon Diep. I've made my choice and I can't walk away from her." His father clenched his jaw, his anger rising. "No, you're not understanding. Even if the pregnancy is real or not, you can't keep going down this path. I won't allow it. Go back home. Forget about her." James's mind raced, his frustration building. What if these rumors aren't true? What if someone is just spreading lies about us? His father glared at him. "You're being naive. Even if it's not true now, what will people think? Your mother and I didn't raise you to follow a path like this." James stood firm. "I understand the consequences, Dad, but I still want to help Diep. Even if this child isn't mine, I'm not going to leave her to deal with this alone." His father's eyes hardened. "You're not thinking clearly. If she's pregnant with someone else's child, what will you do?" James took a deep breath. "If Diep's pregnant with someone else's child, I'll take care of her and the baby. I won't turn my back on them." His father's face twisted in disbelief. "You're out of your mind, James. How can you accept taking care of a child that's not yours? What's wrong with you?" James's voice shook with emotion. "I love Diep, Dad. I'm doing what feels right. I don't care if it's not my child. I love her, and I want to be there for her." His father's eyes widened in shock. "You're insane. You're willing to take responsibility for a child that's not yours? You're destroying your future." "I don't think it's as simple as that, Dad. I'm going to take Diep to the doctor and make sure we know what's really going on," James replied firmly. His father looked at him with a mixture of disappointment and anger. "If you keep going like this, I'll disown you. I won't have a son who's making these foolish decisions." James stood there, stunned by his father's words. "Dad, please. I just want to do what's right." His father turned away, clearly furious. "If you continue with this, you won't be my son anymore. Do you understand me? You've made your choice, but don't expect me to support you." James, his heart breaking, finally said softly, "I'm sorry, Dad." But it felt like there was no turning back now. After James' father finished speaking and walked away, James watched him leave, but he still decided, "I will take Diep to the doctor."
các tỉnh phía Bắc như Hà Giang, Cao Bằng, Bắc Kạn. Người Khmer sinh sống chủ yếu tại các tỉnh phía Nam như Trà Vinh, Sóc Trăng, Bạc Liêu. Người Chăm sinh sống chủ yếu tại các tỉnh phía Nam như Ninh Thuận, Bình Thuận. Người Gia Rai sinh sống chủ yếu ở các tỉnh phía Nam như Gia Lai, Kon Tum. Người Ede sinh sống ở chủ yếu các tỉnh phía Nam như Đắk Lắk, Đắk Nông. Dân tộc thiểu số tại Việt Nam có những nét văn hóa, ngôn ngữ, phong tục tập quán riêng biệt, tạo nên sự đa dạng và phong phú của văn hóa Việt Nam. Một số chính sách của người nhà nước Việt Nam nhằm hỗ trợ và phát triển dân tộc thiểu số bao gồm chính sách hỗ trợ kinh tế, hỗ trợ vốn, kỹ thuật và thị trường cho các dự án phát triển kinh tế dân tộc thiểu số. Chính sách hỗ trợ giáo dục, hỗ trợ cho các học sinh dân tộc thiểu số bao gồm cả việc dạy tiếng dân tộc và tiếng dân tộc thiểu số. Chính sách hỗ trợ y tế